For as creative as a pursuit that podcasting is, it sometimes looks like a math equation with so many numbers being tossed around. Numbers that we're told should be important to us. But says who? Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. As podcasters, we get pretty twisted up by numbers. Download numbers. Numbers of listeners. The number of followers on our social media properties. The number of people who watched our Clubhouse, Twitter Space, Wisdom, Green Room, or pick your own flavor of social drop-in audio. The number of people who are supporting your show on Buy Me a Coffee like I use, or Patreon like you might use. The number of people signed up to your newsletter. The number of Satoshis streamed, or the number of other forms of payments that you receive. The number of advertisers you have, or sponsors that you have. The number of episodes you've produced. The number of episodes you should produce. The number of people who podcast who look like you. The number of people who listen to podcasts who look like you. The number of other podcasts that cover the same topics as you do on your podcast. Yeah, podcasting clearly is a numbers game. And those numbers I just threw out there are just a sampling of how we measure, sometimes, the overall success of podcasting, the overall success of a podcast, the overall success of my podcast is determined by numbers just like that. The overall success of your podcast, we're told, is determined by numbers just like that. But why? Let me tell you what I mean by that. The truth is that some of those numbers may be important to overall podcasting. Some of those numbers may be important to you and your podcast, but many of those numbers will not be at all important to you and your podcasting, though they may be important to podcasting overall. Some of those numbers may have nothing at all to do with you and your podcast. And worse, some of them you have very little control over, if any. Yet we get twisted up by these numbers as podcasters. And for many of them, we really shouldn't. Because again, for many of them, we don't have any control over, and for many more, we don't have any direct evidence to the truth of these numbers. I mean, sure, okay. The number of coffee supporters you might have or premium subscribers on Apple Podcasts, sure, those are numbers that matter and are hard and real and true because you can see the money flowing in from those things. If someone sends you something of value, it's easy to count that and be assured that number is correct. But for everything else, and I actually do mean everything else that I mentioned, suspect. It's just a number. Just a series of digits printed on a page or shown on a screen somewhere. Numbers that you're trusting and numbers I'm trusting some other service to count for us. Now, I don't think that the numbers I'm talking about are purposely incorrect. I think by and large, the numbers that you and I see about our podcast are directionally correct. I'll give them that. But I just don't think that they matter. At least not as much in reality as those numbers matter to us in our heads. But yes, some of those numbers are super important to you and your podcast and all of podcasting. Yes. And many of the numbers also that I mentioned are dependent on one another. I get all of that. But if you're twisted up in these numbers, my advice to you is to figure out which of these numbers actually matter to you, because they cannot all matter to you and to your podcast. There may not be any of them that matter to you and your podcast. And then once you know which ones do matter, pay as little attention to the other ones as you possibly can. You'll be a much happier podcaster for it. And with that, I shall be back tomorrow with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers!